Hey guys, welcome to another front-end project. In this video, we're going to be building an HTML5 and CSS3 website or website template with FlexboxGrid. Now, FlexboxGrid is a very light Flexbox-based grid system, very similar to what you'd find in Bootstrap 4. Okay, without the rest of the framework, if you want to keep things light. I'm also using it because I don't want to use a full framework, because I want this to be geared towards beginners that are just getting into learning HTML5 and CSS. This is actually a really good video to follow up after the HTML5 responsive website video that's pretty popular. So we're going to look at the project, we're going to talk a little bit about FlexboxGrid, and then we'll get into it. This video is sponsored by DevMountain. If you're interested in learning web development, iOS, or UX design, DevMountain is a 12-week design and development bootcamp intended to get you a full-time job in the industry. To learn more, visit devmountain.com or click the link in the description below. Alright guys, so let's take a look at what we'll be building. Now, I'm not a professional designer. I mean, I think it's alright, but it's just a basic template. It's not made to be something that is going to go into production, but very basic, very clean. So up at the top we have our header with just an H1 for the logo, and then we have our basic navigation on the side here. All right, we're going to have a home page, which is the main focus of this project, and then an about, services, and contact page. So here we have a giant showcase image, very high quality. This is a free stock image, so you're free to use this. It's going to be included in the files. And then we just have an H1 and some subtext here with a clear background, or a background that has some transparency. Okay, we also made the radius of the borders really rounded. And then down here we have some icons. We're going to be using Font Awesome, which is it gives us a whole bunch of different icons to work with, and pretty customizable. We change the colors, we can make them bigger or smaller, and these are just some basic core features. All right, and then right under that we have this section here with this faded out background, which I think looks pretty nice, and then we just have a stock image of an iPhone, and then just some core features and an unordered list with some checkbox icons or check marks. And then for the footer we have this area with 3 separate columns, with one with the contact, the about, and then just a simple newsletter form. Okay, no functionality in the forms. This is just strictly front end, and then just a simple copyright. So that'll be this is where the meat of the project will be. Now for the inner pages, they're very simple. For the about page, we just have this who we are section and this what we do, and then we have the footer. All right, we also have this subheader area on the inner pages. So this is the services. It's basically just a UL. It's an unordered list with some background color. We're using CSS3 so we can color every odd or even list item. And then the contact is just a very, very simple form with name, email, and message. All right, so we're going to try to squeeze this into one video. I may have to do 2 or 3, but I'm pretty sure we can do it in one. I just like to keep it under an hour or so. All right, now FlexboxGrid is the reason I'm using this is because I want to keep this very light. I don't want to use a full framework. The main focus of this is going to be learning HTML5 and CSS and building a UI, building a website. But this is just like the Bootstrap 4 grid system. It uses Flexbox, obviously, and it even has the same class names. If we look at this, we have a div with the class of row. So anytime we want a row, we're going to wrap that. Now a row could be anything. This could be a row, and this could be a row with two column divs. And if we look at here, it has some examples with these blue boxes, and the class names are the exact same as Bootstrap. I think it's missing one. I think Bootstrap has an extra large as well, but basically call XS is extra small, small, medium, and large, and this pertains to how big the screen is. So if we go here, this is large, so this particular div would span 4 columns if it was viewed in this screen size. If we go down to about here, that would be medium, so that would be 6. If we go down, if we go down to around here, that would be small, so that would be 8 columns this div would stretch. And if we went really small, extra small, it would be 12 columns, which would be the entire width of that element. So for instance, this right here would be a 12 column. This would be 2 6-column divs. All right, this would be, it looks like a 10 and then a 2 column. It just has to add up to 12, okay, because it's a 12 column base grid. You can also do fluid lengths, so this would be percentages. You can see it works with flex styling behind the scenes. Simple syntax, let's see, offsets, just like with Bootstrap, you can do call and then the size and then the offset. For instance, this one here looks like it's a 1 column that's offset 10 or offset 11. All right, this looks like a 11 column offset by 1. You can also do auto width, which is really nice. So if you want all your columns in that row to be the same size, you don't even have to specify the size. You could just do call XS or call MD or LG or whatever. Nested grids, you can also put grids inside of other grids or columns inside of other columns. And then this here, alignment, is really nice. This is what's really nice about Flexbox, is that we can easily align it by saying, for instance, this row, we would want all of the columns to be aligned to the left, which would be start. If we wanted them aligned centered, we could do center and then the size. And if we wanted them aligned to the right, we could do end. So end XS or end MD. And then you can also align them vertically. So you can do top, middle, and bottom. All right, and then you can also you can control the padding and margin and all that. So you can apply distribution. You can do around, between, all the stuff that you can do with Flexbox, you can do with this framework. It's just easier. All right, I would suggest after doing this, looking at the Flexbox in 20 minutes video, and that will give you some good insight into how to actually use just Flexbox. So enough of the explanation. Let's go ahead and get started. What did we already go through? Quite a few minutes here. So we're going to do everything basically the easiest way possible. We're going to just download this. We're not going to use Bower or any package managers. We're not going to use SAS. This is geared towards beginners just getting into HTML and CSS. All right, so I'm going to create a new project folder. Let me just go into my projects folder. You can create this wherever you want, and we're going to call this app theme. Okay, let me actually get my other keyboard. It's a little quieter. It's not mechanical. All right, and we're going to create an index.html file, which will be our home page. And let's create, we might as well create the folders here. So CSS and images. Okay, no JavaScript. Maybe we can do that in another video, but this is just strictly HTML and CSS. All right, so let's open this up. I'm going to be using Atom for my text editor, which is really nice. It's built on top of Electron, which is a framework that allows you to build desktop applications with JavaScript, so it's really nice. And then we're just going to open that folder and add it as a project. So I want to go to my projects, app theme, and select that folder. All right. So now we're going to add some basic HTML tags. So if you're in Atom, you can do HTML tab, and it'll give you this base structure of a document. And then let's put in app theme for our title. And then we're going to need to include our CSS files. So we're going to download FlexboxGrid. So let's go to download. We're going to do it the easiest way possible, which is just grabbing the zip file, and we'll go into that. Now this has all the source code. It has the production code. It has the documentation, all kinds of stuff. But all we need is in this CSS folder. We want this FlexboxGrid.css. So let's bring that over to our CSS folder. All right, we'll close that up, and then we're also going to create a custom style sheet called style.css. All right, so now let's go back to our HTML and let's add, we'll say CSS/FlexboxGrid.css, and then we'll copy this, and then we want our custom style sheet, just like that. All right, so we're going to start off with the header. So let's take a look at the finished project here. So we have this header, and if I open up Chrome Tools and click Inspect, it'll highlight the divs, the elements. So this is a 10 column div. You can see it stretches 10 columns wide, and then this is a 2 column. Okay, so what we need to do is create a row. This whole thing is a row, and then we have a 2 column and a 10 column. All right, now the only time it's not 10 and 2 is if we go down to extra small, and then you can see each one is 12 columns, which reaches across the entire thing. So we need to specify that as well. Just remember that. So let's go into our HTML here, and I'm just going to add in a comment here. So let's say this is going to be the header, and this is going to be, we're going to use the header tag, which is an HTML5 tag. Now, when we style this, we could just grab onto the header element, but if you have multiple header elements, like let's say you have an article or a blog and you have a header at the top of each article, we don't want it to style that. So let's give this an ID of main header. All right, now the difference between IDs and classes, a lot of people get confused when they're just starting out. You want to use an ID for something that's unique. So for instance, we're not going to have a main header anywhere else in the website. So that's something that you would put in an ID. A class, however, is something that you'll probably reuse throughout the site, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. So in the header, we're going to put a div with the class of container, and what that does is it consolidates everything into a certain percentage of the screen. Now, for some reason, FlexboxGrid doesn't add a margin to it, so it doesn't push it into the middle. So we'll have to add that, but I'll show you what I mean in a few minutes. So in the container, we then need a row. All right, so let's say div class row, and in here we're going to have 2 divs, which are going to be our columns. This is where the logo will go, and I'll add the classes in a minute, which is going to be an H1 that'll say app theme, and then we'll have another column or another div which will have the navigation. So let's put in a nav tag here, and again I'm going to give this nav an ID so that we can specify this particular menu. And then in here we'll have a UL, an unordered list, and then some LI tags with some links inside. So this is going to go to index.html. So that'll be a link to home, and then we're going to have a couple other ones. So this will be about, this will be services, and this will be contact. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So we'll open it up. I'm just going to use the file system. I'm not using a server or anything. And notice how the menu is aligned to the right. Okay. If we didn't specify that this was a row, it wouldn't be. So if I were to just get rid of the row class and reload, then you can see it just goes on one under each other. But since we added a row, it's going to float everything. Now, you only don't want to specify a column if they're always going to be equal, and they're not. We're going to have a 2 column and then a 10 column. It's not going to be, for instance, 3, 3, 3. So we have to specify in here that we want this to be, we'll say call MD for medium size screens, and this will be 2. Okay. It's also going to be call SM. Actually, no. Let's do. I want to put it in order. I want to have extra small, small, medium, large. I sound like I'm ordering McDonald's. So call SM2, call MD2, call LG2. Okay, and remember when it's extra small, when it's the mobile version, we don't want this to be a 2 column. We want it to go all the way across, which will be a 12 column. So this will be call XS12. All right, hopefully that makes sense. And then I'm just going to copy this and go here, and then this is going to be 10 columns, except for when it's extra small, it'll be 12 columns. All right, so now let's go back and reload, and let's open up the Chrome tools and inspect, and you'll see that this is 10 columns, this is 2 columns. But when we go to extra small, it goes to 12 columns each, okay, which goes across the whole page. Now, I want this to be aligned to the middle. Like I said, for some reason, FlexboxGrid doesn't add the margin. It does add the boundaries. You'll see that it ends here. So what we'll do is just open up our style sheet and say .container. This is the only CSS I'm going to add for right now. And we're just going to do margin auto, which should bring everything into the middle, because what it does is it gives the same amount of margin on all sides, so on the left and the right, and it pushes it into the middle. Alright, so if we reload, now you'll see that it's pushed in the middle, which is what we want. Alright, so let's go back to our index.html, and let's see, another thing we want to do is align. We want to align both of these to be to the right, okay, because the navigation, we want it to be over here. Let me shut that off. We want the navigation over here. Now if we go to our documentation and we look at alignments, we want this, okay, the menu should be over here. So we need to add the alignments to the row class. So we're going to do end dash and then whatever the size we want, okay, which is going to be everything except XS. XS, remember, it's a 12 column div when it's mobile version, so it doesn't matter. We don't need to align it. So for the row, let's say we want it aligned to the end for small, for medium, and for large. So now let's go back and reload, and now you'll see that they're both aligned to the right. Okay, never mind these bullet points. We'll remove those later. So that should be it for the header as far as the markup, as far as the HTML. So let's move on to the showcase. We're going to go under the header. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. And let's put a comment here. This is going to be the showcase. Okay, so let's say we're actually going to use a section. And a section is also an HTML5 tag. We're going to give it an ID of showcase. And then in here, we're going to do the same thing, add a container. Now, the reason I don't put container before showcase is because if we look at the final template here, the container keeps everything in here, okay, from here to here. And the image, we want it to span across the entire thing. If we added the container around the showcase, where we're going to put the image, it would end right here, and I don't want that. Alright, so in here, let's put our row, and we're going to have, this is actually going to be, it's going to go across the whole page. Yeah, so let's put another div here, and this is where we'll have our H1, which will say welcome to what did I say? Welcome to app theme. And I'm also going to wrap this in a span with class of primary text. And I think I need to do that to the logo as well. Let me see, did I do that yet? No, I didn't. So we just want to go right here and put a span class equals primary text. Okay, and that's, like I said, it's a good example of when to use a class because we're using this throughout the whole site. Now, the reason we use a span instead of a div is because a span is inline. It's an inline element while a div is block level element. And what that means is if it's a block level, after the tag ends right here, it would put this on another line, on a new line. All right, we don't want that. We want this all on the same line, so a span will actually let us do that. All right, so back down here, let's put in a paragraph, and we'll just say a template built with HTML5, CSS3, and FlexboxGrid. All right, so it's our showcase. Now, as far as the columns, it's going to be, if we look at it, it's going to be one long column, so it's going to be one long div, so it'll be 12 columns. So let's go in here and say call XS12, call SM12, MD, and LG. And let's save that. And then we'll take a look at it. Okay, so it's going to look very ugly because we haven't added our own CSS. But we want to align it to the middle, or to the center horizontally, and to the middle vertically. So we need to, remember, we add our alignments to the row class. So this will be center XS. We want it centered on for all screen sizes. So small, MD, large. We also want it middle, which is vertical. So middle XS, middle SM, middle LG. All right, and now if we go and reload, it should align to the middle. Good. So that's the showcase. Now we want the feature section. So let's go down here and add a comment. Features. Okay, same thing. These are all going to have, all the sections will have the same basic layout. The only difference is going to be the width of each column and the alignments. So this will have an ID of features. And again, we'll have a container. And we'll have our row. And then we have our columns. So let's take a look at what features is going to look like. Alright, so this is an example of nesting grids, because the whole thing together, this whole area, is going to be a 12 column div that goes across the whole thing. And then inside that, we're going to have 2 rows of 3 column divs. Or I'm sorry, yeah, 3 4 column divs, because 3 times 4 is 12. So if we set them to 4, there's going to be 3 of them. So let's start off with the 12 column. So we'll say call, let's see, call XS 12, call SM 12, all right, and then in here we're going to have our H2, which will say core features, and then we'll have a paragraph which will just say what's included. Whoops. And then we're going to start the first row, which will have the 3 4 column divs. So this will have a row, and then we'll do call XS. All right, now the extra small isn't going to have 3 4 column divs. It's going to be just one across, which will be 12 columns. So call XS 12, and then the rest of them we want them to float. So this will be 4, MD4, LG4. All right, and then each one's going to have an icon, which I'll get to in a second. We need to use Font Awesome for that. But let's put an H4, and we'll say fully optimized. And then a paragraph. Now this is just going to be some dummy text. With Atom, we can type in lorem tab, and it's going to just put in some sample text here. But I want this really short, so I'm going to end it right here. All right, now remember, each row will have 3 of these, so we need to copy this, paste it in 2 more times, and let's change this to free support, and change this to free upgrades. Okay, now remember, we need 2 of these rows, so let's add a comment here. We'll just say icon row 1. And that ends right here, so I'm going to copy this whole thing. And then this will be icon row 2. So let's change these. This one's going to be uptime guarantee. This one's going to be multi-user. And this one's going to be plug and play. All right, so let's go ahead and save and take a look at it. Okay, good. Now we want everything aligned to the middle. If we look here, we want the whole 12 column row, which is everything, aligned to the middle, as well as each one of these. So remember, alignments go in the row. So let's go right here and we'll say center XS, center MD, center LG. And then we'll just copy this and put that on these two as well. All right, and let's reload. Now everything's aligned to the middle. So now for the icon. So you can see each one of these has an icon. So let's go to Font Awesome. And we're going to download the package and open that up. And again, this comes with everything, SAS files, less files. All we want is in the CSS folder. We want this file right here. So we're going to bring that over to our CSS file. And then we also want to bring over the fonts folder to the root of our website. All right, and that should be good to go. So let's go ahead and close that up. And now let's go to where we have fully optimized, and we're going to put in an I tag with the class of FA, Font Awesome. And then also the specific image we want, which is called FA Dashboard. And you can find all the class names at the Font Awesome website. All right, and that should be all we need to put right there. Actually, let's put a line break. All right, and then we'll copy this, and then let's go above free support. This one is going to be, let's see, what is it? FA question circle O. So question dash circle dash O. All right, and then free upgrades is going to be FA rocket. And then let's see, uptime guarantee is going to be FA dash line dash chart. And let's see, multi-user will be FA users. And plug and play is going to be FA plug. All right, so let's see if the icons, actually, you know what? They're not going to work because we didn't bring in the style sheet yet. So let's go ahead and copy that. And then we're just going to add here. Font dash awesome. So let's go back. Where the hell's my navbar? Alright, so let's reload, and now you can see this icons. They're very small, but we'll fix that later on when we add our CSS. So the next thing we want is the info section, which is this right here, which is going to be two 6-column divs, okay, split right down the middle, aligned to the middle, aligned to the center. So let's do that. Features. So under the features section, we'll have info section. Okay, and it's going to be a section tag with an ID of info. Div class container, div class row, and then our columns. So remember, they're going to be two 6-column divs, so we can say call XS, except for when it's extra small, when it's a mobile version, it'll be 12 columns because we don't want to float the two if the screen is really small. But the rest will be 6. Okay, there's going to be 2 of them. This one's going to have the image of the iPhone. So let's say image source is going to be images/iphone.png, and you'll have all these files for download in the description. Let me just add them to my folder. I have the finished product in my sandbox here, so I'm just going to grab all 3 of these images and paste those in. Alright, so we have the iPhone on one side, and then we have the core features on the other. So this will be an H, is it an H4? No, it's an H2. We'll say core features. And then we're going to have an unordered list. I'm just going to paste this in. Okay, so we just have some check icons and then the same features that we had above. So let's save that and see what it looks like. Alright, now the image is absolutely huge. What we need to do is we need to say that we want that width to be 100% of its container, which is its container is over here. So again, this is going to be CSS that I add right now. So let's say image. So all images I'm going to set to 100% of their container by default. So now if we go back and reload, it's actually contained in its container. So we want these aligned to the middle and center. So let's go back to the row. That's where we do our alignments. And we're going to do center XS, center medium, center LG. We also want to align to the middle vertically for all sizes. Middle SM, middle MD, and middle large. Let's take a look. Okay, that's good. Now we're going to do the footer, the company area, and then the footer. So under here, let's say company. Oops. So notice how every section has basically the same kind of formatting. That's what you want to do when you're building UIs, is you want kind of like components. You can look at each of these sections as a component that takes in certain attributes. So section ID will be company. And then let's say we want our container. This will be row. Oops. Then we'll have our columns. Let's see what we got here. I think it's 3 4-column divs. Yeah, so this will be 4 columns, 4 columns, 4 columns. Except for when it's extra small, then they'll be on top of each other. So let's do div class, not dick, but div. Div class. Div. Dick class. And this will actually be call dash XS. And what are we doing? We're doing 3 4-column divs, except XS will be 12. All right, so call SM will be 4, MD 4, and LG 4. And let's see, each one's going to have an H4. So let's say H4. This will say about us. Now this will be, what's this one? Contact us, which is going to have a UL. Whoops, no one, LI. So the phone number, we're going to use Font Awesome here as well. So let's say iClass FA and FA-phone. Okay, put a space there, and then let's put a fake phone number. And then I'll just copy that. Okay, so phone, this one's going to be envelope. Can't spell. Sorry guys, hold on. My alarm's going off. Alright, so envelope, and then this is going to be the email address. So let's say support, we'll say support at apptheme.test. And then we'll have the address. This will have an icon of FA map. And we'll just put in a fake address here. Alright, so let's look at that, make sure the icons show up. Alright, good. So next one will be about us. I'm going to copy this whole div right here. And then this will be about. And then as far as this, we're going to get rid of the UL and just put a paragraph and say lorem tab. And then I want this to be a little shorter. I'm going to bring it, let's see. Let's go up to here. So that's the about, and then we'll paste in again, and this one will be the newsletter. So we'll put that, and then let's just grab this, and then we'll have a form. We're not going to need these attributes. It's not going to actually submit. So let's put an input, type of text. We'll just give it a name of email, and let's see, let's put a button. We'll give it a type of submit, and let's give it some text. We'll just say submit, and yeah, that should be good. For the input, let's actually put a placeholder. that will just say enter email. Alright, let's check that out. There we go. And then we just need the simple footer at the bottom. So let's go under the section. Okay, so we'll use a footer tag here, and it's a good idea to give this its own ID. Yeah, so footer ID, we'll call it main footer, just in case you have a footer tag somewhere else. And then inside here, let's do a container, and we'll do our row. And then this is just going to be a 12 column div, so we can do call XS12. Okay, we'll put a paragraph in here that'll say copyright ampersand copy semicolon will give us the little symbol 2017, and then we'll say app theme. Alright, now we want this to be aligned to the center, so let's go to the row class and we'll say XS or center XS center. Alright, let's check it out. Reload, and there we go. So our HTML is pretty much done for the home page. Let's finish the inner pages before we get to our CSS. So we're going to create a couple more pages here. Let's say new file about.html. Let's say new file services.html. Whoops, not HTML. And then contact.html. Alright, and then we'll copy what we have in index, copy everything. Actually, one thing I want to check, in the navigation here, I want to add a class to the current page we're on called current. So we'll add it to the li. So let's again copy everything here, go to about, paste it in, and then we're going to go to the top. And in the title, I'm just going to add a pipe character and then the page name. And we're going to remove the class current from home to about. And then there's no showcase, so we can get rid of that. We can get rid of features. We can get rid of info. Let's keep company and footer. All right, and then this section here is going to be the subheader. All right, because if we look at our site here and we go to about, you'll see this right here with the title. This is the subheader. Okay, and then we just want the main page area. So two sections that we need to add here. So section ID will be subheader. And we're going to put a container. You know the drill. Container, row, content. And this will be a 12 column div. It's going to go all the way across no matter what. So we can do call XS12. Now, when it goes all the way across, you don't even have to specify these, but I think it's clean just to have it anyways, just in case you want to change it later or something. All right, and let's see. We're going to put, I think it's in H1. Yeah, in H1. And we'll say about us. So that's the subheader. Let's go ahead and check that. So we'll go to our about page, and it should look like that. So under the subheader, we'll have our main page. So let's give it a section. So we're going to give it an ID of page, but we're also going to give it a class of about, so we can specifically target this page if we need to, which we probably will. And then same thing, container, row, content. Okay, so this will also be a 12 column. I'm just going to copy this. All right, and as far as alignment, I want it to align to the center for all sizes. What did I forget? Small. Okay, and then for the content, let's put an H2, and we're going to say who we are. So who we are, and I'm going to make the who, the word who, green. So we'll give that a span with a class of primary text, just wrapping the who. And then let's put a paragraph with some dummy text, and I'll just copy that. I'm going to put 2 paragraphs. Okay, and now I'm going to copy the H2 and both paragraphs and paste that in right underneath, and then this is going to be what we do. Okay, let's check it out. Alright, actually let's put an HR between the two. Horizontal rule, which will just put a line there. Good. So now services. Let's copy about, everything in about, and go to services. And then let's go up to the top, and we're going to change this. And let's change the current class. We're going to move that to services. Change it in the subheader. And then for the main page, let's change the class to services. And we'll get rid of everything that's in the 12-column div here. Get rid of that. And we're going to put, let's see. Actually, I want one of those H2s. So let's get rid of everything but one H2. Alright, and then this is going to be C, what we offer. See what we offer, and this is going to be a UL, and then each list item is going to have an H3 with a service. So let's say web design and development, and then we'll put a paragraph, and let's just lorem tab. Again, if you're not using Atom, you can just put whatever you want. Just copy some. You can go to lipsum.com and you can generate this sample text. Alright, so paste that in twice. This one, we'll change the title to Software Development and Programming. And then this one here we'll change to Graphic Design. And save. And that should be fine. Alright, whoop, what's wrong with that span? Span class. I forgot that. So now let's go to contact, copy everything here and go to contact, paste it in, and then this is the last page. So let's change that. Let's change the class of current. We're going to put that onto this one. Change the subheader. Change the class of the page. And then every time you want to add a page, you can just use this basically this template. Alright, let's see. We're going to get rid of the H2 and the UL. And let me see here. Actually, no, I want the H2, just the UL. So this one will say get in touch. Okay, and then we'll just put a paragraph here and we'll say please use this form to contact us. Alright. And then in the form, I'm going to wrap the label and the input in a div. Let's say label. We'll say label for name. And then have an input. We'll give it a name of name, no value. Copy that. Let's put a line break right here after the label. And then we'll paste this in 2 more times. This one will be for email. This one will be for message. And this is not going to be an input, it's going to be a text area. We'll give it a name of message. Remember, text areas have a closing tag, inputs don't have to. And then finally, we just need a submit button. So let's do button, type submit. There we go. So that should be all the markup. Okay, so now it looks like shit, so we have to add all our custom CSS. So let's go to style.css, and we're going to basically work in the same direction that we did the HTML. So let's start with the body. This will wrap around everything, obviously. We're going to change the font, or we're going to add a font family, and let's say we want to use Open Sans. All right, and then as a fallback, we'll do sans serif. All right, I'm going to change the font size to 17 pixels, make it a little bigger. Set the line height, which is the height in between each line, which will set to 1.5 m. Height. And let's see what else. I'm going to set margin and padding to 0 on the body, just so there's no space around the website. Okay, that should be good. Let's check it out. Reload. Now our fonts have changed. Let's see. So let's add our common classes, I guess. Which we don't have much. I think we just have primary text. So primary text is going to have a color, which is going to be a hexadecimal value. Okay, so it's going to be this right here, 56A79A. It's kind of a green color. And then I'm also going to, we didn't use it, but I'm also going to add a primary background and then set that to background of that color, just in case you want to use that as a background. All right, so after that, let's do the header. Okay, so remember we gave it an ID of main header. And the only thing I want to do here is put a border bottom, which will be 1 pixels. It'll be solid, and it'll be this color here. All right, so let's take a look at that. Reload. There we go. So now we want to do the navbar. We want this to be inline, so it goes, you know, horizontally. So let's add a comment here. We'll say navbar. And let's see, that had an ID, I believe, of navbar, right? So for the actual core navbar, all I want to do is set text transform to uppercase. All right, now obviously you could have just typed in uppercase letters, but you want to keep it so that if you wanted to change that, you don't have to edit the markup. You could simply change this. All right, now for the navbar li tags, for those, we want to display inline, meaning side by side. All right, and then we'll set a padding right. We'll set a padding right of 20 pixels. And then we'll set list style none so that there's no bullet points. So let's check that out. Reload. There we go. Now for the links, we want to change the color. We also want to remove that underline. So let's say navbar A. We're going to say text decorator none and set the color of them to 888, which is a light gray. Actually, this should be text decoration, not decorator. All right, now for the hover state and the current state, those are going to have the same styling. So we're going to say navbar li.current, and we want to make sure we style the link that's inside that. And then we also want navbar links that are hovered. All right, so we're going to change the color to the green color, which is this right here. This is where Sass comes in handy. We could just put that color in a variable and not have to repeat it here, but that's more, I want this to be very, very beginner friendly. Hopefully it is. Hopefully you guys are understanding. Let's see, we're also going to put a border bottom, which will be 3 pixels. 3 pixels, solid, and it's going to be that green color. Alright, and then I just want to add a little padding to the bottom to kind of push the border down a little. And that'll be 3 pixels. Alright, let's check it out. Reload. Good. So our header is done, right? Yeah, I think so. Let me just check something in the HTML. Oh, yeah. You see how this here looks like it's not quite in the middle. It needs to be pushed down. So I want to set the row to align to the middle. So in the header, where we have the row with these ends, we're also going to add middle. Alright, let's see if that works. So index page, reload, and it pushed it down. Now we're going to have to add that to all the pages. So let's copy that. Let's go to About and put that right here. Go to Contact. Put that right here. We already did Index and Services. Where is it? The hell is it? Right here. Alright, so that should update it on all pages. Good. Alright, so where are we? Showcase. Now we're going to move on to this, which is the showcase. So let's see. Style, CSS. Alright, so ID, showcase. So for the showcase itself, we want a background image. Alright, so let's say background, it's going to be from a URL, and it's going to be / images, meaning that we need to go out of the CSS folder that we're currently in and then into images. Alright, and then it's going to be a file called showcase.jpg. Okay, now we're going to set that to no repeat, because by default it'll just keep repeating. Alright, and then we want to center the image top and horizontally and vertically. Alright, and then let's set a border bottom to the showcase. It's going to be the same as the header, just like this. Okay, and then let's also set a margin bottom to push everything under it down 30 pixels. Now, remember we aligned the showcase stuff to the middle, so we want to apply a height to the row because that's where the middle alignment was applied. So let's say showcase row, and we're going to set the height to 600 pixels. Alright, so let's go reload, and there we go, 600 pixels. It now has a background image. Now let's do this stuff here. So let's see. So we have an H1. So showcase H1. And we're going to set the font size to be pretty big. It's going to be 50 pixels. And then we're going to set margin to 0 because by default H1s will have margin. And then padding bottom because we want to push the text under it down 20 pixels. Alright, let's look at that. Okay, and then for the paragraph under it, I'm going to paragraphs by default have a margin of 10 pixels on top and bottom. So we're going to remove that and make this lighter. So let's say showcase paragraph, and we'll set the color. The color of it will be set to CCC, which is light gray, and let's remove the margin. Alright, now we wrapped the heading and the paragraph in a class called showcase content. At least we should have. Let me just double check. Oh no, I didn't. So I'm just going to add on to this class here, showcase dash content, because we need to add that background the dark background color. So down here we'll say showcase class showcase content, and let's see, we're going to add a background of 333. We're going to set the color to white. We're going to set the border radius to 90 pixels, make it very rounded. And we're going to set the padding inside of it to 40 pixels. And then we're going to set the opacity, which will make it transparent, to 0.9. So that way it'll be a little bit see-through. So let's reload, and there we go. Now, the background, the section content has the same class as the row, right? So I want this to be a little short. I don't want so much space on the sides. So let's go to our index, and instead of using 12 for all of these, let's do one second. Let's do, for the large, 7. For the medium, we'll do 10. Actually, we'll do 10 for the rest, because right now it's set to 12. Alright, so let's go reload, and now that's shorter. And if we resize this, you'll see it looks pretty good. Now, where we start to get issues is here, which is extra small. And why is this? That shouldn't be like that. Let me just check the header real quick. So we have a row, main header. Let me just see what's going on here. Middle LG and XS, when it's in its mobile view, should be centered. So we just want to add on to this right here. We'll say center XS. There we go. Perfect. Now we're gonna have to add that to the rest of the rest of the files as well. That contact and services. All right. So let's see. So for this right here, I obviously don't like that. What I'm going to do is add in a media query. So media queries allow us to set specific styles for specific screen sizes. So let's go to our style sheet and go down to the bottom. That's where I usually put these. So media queries. So the way that we define this is by saying @media, and then in here it takes a parameter of, let's say, max width, and we'll say 800 pixels. Alright, so any styles we put in here will only apply if it's under 800 pixels. So I'm going to say showcase H1, and I'm going to make the font size smaller. So font size will be 30 pixels if it's under 800 pixels wide. So let's check it out. Okay, so that made it smaller. Now I also want to make the padding less if it's below 500 pixels. So that would be something like this, okay? So that looks good up until it gets to about 500 pixels, and then the padding forces it to be on double on 2 lines. So let's just copy this, and this will be for 500 pixels or less, and we're going to set the showcase content, and we're going to set that to padding. Still going to have 40 pixels on the top and bottom, but only 10 on the left and right, as opposed to 40 all around. And now if we reload, now it looks good. Alright, so it's very responsive up to this point. So let's move on to the core features. So we'll go back to our style sheet, and let's go right here, and we'll say features. Okay, let me just check this out real quick. Sorry about this. This video is getting really long. Let me see, features. Alright, so let's start off with the H2 at the top. features H2, and we're going to set the font size. Set the font size to 35 pixels. We're going to set the margin to 0, and we're going to set the padding bottom to 10 pixels. Alright, so that pertains to this right here. Now for the paragraph underneath, let's do that. Okay, so we're going to say color is going to be 888, which is a light gray. We also want to remove the margin, and we want to set margin bottom to 40 pixels. Alright, now for the icons, they're way too small, so we're going to say features I, or actually no, let's be more specific and say .fa, so the font awesome classes. And we'll set the font size to 60 pixels, and we'll also set the color of them to that green color, which is this right here. Whoops, where am I going? Right here. Alright, let's take a look at that. There we go. So that's it for the features section. Now for the info, let's go down, let's go there. So we'll say info, and let's see, we'll say ID info. We're actually going to set a background image for that. Okay, so it's going to go outside of images, outside of CSS into images, and then it's called info-bg.jpg. Alright, we're going to set that to no repeat. And let's just make the color white. And actually, you know what? Let's also add a color to the background. So we want to do 333. So let's check that out. Alright, so that looks good. Now for let's see, we want to do the H2, and then we want to do the list here, the unordered list. So let's say info H2. And all we're going to do for this is we're going to change the font size to 35 pixels, and we're going to set margin 0 and padding bottom 10 pixels. Alright, then we're going to do the UL. Trying to speed it up here a little bit. So the UL is going to have a line height, a list style of none, because we don't want to show the bullets. And we're going to set the padding to 0, because by default a UL has a padding of 10 pixels. Alright, and then we'll do the LIs, which will have a line height. We want those to be a little further apart, so we'll say 2M, and let's say font size 20 pixels. And that should be it for the info. So let's reload, and good. So now the company area right here, remember it has an ID of company. Okay, so company, we're going to set the background to 333, which is dark gray, and we're going to set the color to white, and we're going to set the padding to 10 pixels 0. Alright, and then the H4. So company H4, and that's going to be, we're going to make that uppercase. So text transform uppercase, and we're going to set the margin bottom to 0. And then for the UL, which is under the contact, let's see, company UL, and we'll set the padding to 0. We're going to set the list style to none. You can put list style on either UL or LI, and then we'll set the line height to what, 2M. Alright, so let's check out the company area. Oh, we need to set the color to white. I didn't do that. Oh. Alright, you know what, let's also do this text area and the button. I want them to be kind of just higher, increase the height or the padding. So let's do company, and then we can target a specific type of input. We want the text, so we can actually do brackets and then type equals text. And for that, let's do padding 7 pixels, and then we'll do the button. And for the button, we're going to say background 222, color white, padding 10 pixels, and border 0. There we go. So that looks a little cleaner. And then the footer, let's see, the footer is actually going to be the green color. So let's say, what do I call it? Main footer, I think. Main footer. Let's set the background to, where is it? Right here. Again, this is where Sass comes in handy. Also, we could nest our styles with Sass. Alright, so that's the background. That means we need to make the color white. Alright, so now all we have to do is the inner page styles. If we go to About, About looks pretty good. One thing I want to do is the page. All of these have IDs of pages. I just want to add a margin bottom to push the footer down a little more. So let's go over here and let's say ID page, margin bottom 40 pixels. All right, now for the services page, which remember is basically just a UL, we're going to say dot services, because remember the page had a class of services, so we could target that page. And then I want to get the UL LIs, and I'm going to get rid of the bullets, and then I'm going to add padding of 10 pixels. All right, and then every odd one I want to have a background of dark gray, and then every even should have the green background. So we can use CSS3 for that, saying, oops. So the services class, UL LIs, and then we can use this nth child. All right, and then we can grab onto all the odd ones. Okay, and then let's say background will be dark gray, color white, and then let's copy that, and then this one's going to be for even, and that's going to have the green color. So let's check that out. Go to services, and there we go. So now even if we add more, it's going to stay in that pattern, which is cool. All right, so last thing is the contact page. We just want to kind of add a dark background to that. So let's say contact, and let's see, ID contact. Now we want to target the form, and that's what we're going to add the background to. Color should be white. And let's see, padding, we'll say 20 pixels. All right, then we want to target the inputs, the text inputs of the contact form. This should actually be a class contact. So form inputs that have the type of text. And we want to make these wider, so we'll say width 50% of its container. And let's give it a height of 30 pixels. And let's give it margin bottom of 10 pixels. All right, then we want to do the text area. I'm going to copy that, and we'll change this to text area with 50%. And then for the height, we can do 100 pixels. All right, and then finally the button. We'll say form button. And let's see, we're going to do width 50%, padding is going to be 10 on the top and bottom, 0 on the sides. Border will be 0. Background will be 222, and color will be white. Alright, and then finally the labels, so contact, form, label. I just want those to be uppercase, so text, transform, uppercase. Whoops. That's funny, I actually hit the uppercase key when I was typing uppercase. Alright, so we should be all set. Let's take a look. Bam. We can't see the labels though. What, did I not put the text in? Let's see. Whoops, where is it? Labels. I didn't put any text in here. It sucks when you mess up, but it's such a stupid, like, small mess up that I'm not going to go back and take that out of the video. That's insane. Alright, so reload, and there we go. There's our form. Alright, so like I said, this isn't the best looking template, but I don't think it's horrible, and it's, you know, hopefully it taught you a little something about HTML5 syntax and CSS. I mean, I wanted this to be a good tutorial for beginners that are just learning how to build websites and UIs. In FlexboxGrid, take it or leave it. Some people might not like it. You may just want to use just Flexbox or just Bootstrap and use that grid system. But I think it's a pretty good alternative. It's much easier to use than you know, natural Flexbox. But hopefully you guys like this. I'm going to be coming out. I'm going to start on a Udemy course for front-end development. It's going to be like a mega course. It's going to have all kinds of technologies in it. I'm going to make a video about it soon. But hopefully you guys like this. If you did, please leave a like. Please subscribe. Whatever you can do is fine. And thanks for watching.